Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our LinkedIn Live session this morning. My name is Sid Mukherjee. I'm the Chief Digital Officer at Teleperformance. And today I have a very special guest, Peter Ryan, who's a very well-known industry analyst. He's joining me to have a fireside chat around generative AI. Peter, thank you for joining me.
Sid, it's great to be here. Thanks for the chance. Always love to catch up with my pals at Teleperformance. And I tell you, we could use a fireside chat in Montreal today. We are running at about 7 degrees Celsius, and that is pretty cold. So I could use that warmth.
Yeah, can't complain about the weather out here in California. It's
Yeah,
nice and
stop,
sunny.
stop. Yeah.
Summer still in October. Okay, so we are here to
Okay.
talk about generative AI, Peter, and obviously, since OpenAI launched ChatGPT late last year, there's been an absolute frenzy about the potential of generative AI. But organizations are still at a very early pilot stage, and even Gartner, which came out with its hype cycle recently, said that generative AI is probably at the peak of inflated expectations. It's still
Mhm.
maybe 5, 10 years away from seeing any industry-wide adoption. What's your sort of current feel about the state of AI? Are we really ready to see organizations mature in the adoption of AI at an enterprise scale? Or are you thinking that it's still maybe early stage pilots at this time?
Look, Sid, it's a really good question. And by the way, I wouldn't disagree with what Gartner has said in terms of their analysis. In my opinion, we're very much at a point currently where there is incredible hype and there is incredible uncertainty around what these solutions actually can do at an enterprise level. My concern is that we've seen this film before and we know how it ends. I mean, Sid, you and I have been around the track for quite some time in the tech and the CX industry. I mean, I remember when IVR, speech automated IVR, was going to kill the contact center. I remember when automation was going to kill the contact center a decade ago. Now we're at the point where there's all sorts of prognostications by so-called thought leaders who love to publish their opinions and stroke their egos on LinkedIn. But the reality is that we're still very much at a point where these technologies are nascent from a CX angle. And in my view, these technologies have the fundamental premise of changing how CX is going to be done. Let's be very clear on that. But we're still very much at that level of nascency. And what will be interesting for me, as well as I think for my colleagues in the industry analyst game, will be to see how this evolves. And in
Yeah.
many cases, what the expectations about how something is going to evolve rarely actually goes free to form, and it could take an entirely different angle and a different approach.
100%. And I think definitely one needs to keep the media hype and the frenzy just out and focus on the positive aspects that the technology is starting to offer now. And I think since late last year, with large language models coming out and becoming more and more available for enterprise users, for end users, to start to explore different types of use cases, there's significant potential across the organization. And customer service, one would think, is one of the areas where there would definitely be a lot of potential for AI. And not again to fall into the media frenzy of AI taking away human jobs. It's more, I think, from a human augmentation that AI has a much bigger role to play. Sure, it will
Mhm.
take away some of the transactional kind of activities, but I think the bigger role that AI has to play is really to augment humans to deal with complex situations. And we talk about. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, you were reading my mind right there, Sid. Like the thing that comes to my mind immediately when I think about AI and what it can do. Sure, as you say, you're spot on. It can take away some of those more transactional elements within the CX space. Excuse me. But where I see a real opportunity in the near term is to augment that agent experience. Now, the reality is, so many agents right now are dealing with customers and they might be using two, three, four different platforms in order to do their jobs. Imagine what a knowledge management system powered by AI could do in terms of developing a consumer interaction, whether on the telephone or digitally, in order to make sure that that agent has got everything that they need to serve somebody efficiently, but
Yeah.
certainly do so in a warm manner. And in my view, not only will this mean more satisfied customers, but it's going to mean more satisfied agents More satisfied agents stay in their role longer, they do it better, and that means more long-term stickiness with the client that might be working with a BPO, and certainly in terms of the consumer.
100%. And I think that's the most important use case that you just mentioned in terms of knowledge management, because traditionally enterprise knowledge management systems have been very clunky and very difficult to navigate.
Yeah.
And you don't want a customer to be on hold for several minutes while the agent is trying to find the right information for them. And that's where generative AI really has the power of identifying the right response, summarizing the response in a way that the agent can really relate to the customer. And it helps the knowledge gap between the tenured agent and a new agent. And I think that's really key in our industry as well. Some of the other use cases, Peter, that we are starting to see is really around summarization, interaction summarization, response generation, really to also tackle with average handling times, helping with the wrap-up kind of activities, helping with even things like QA. QA has been a very manual and a tedious activity. Normally in contact centers, anywhere between 2 to 5% of interactions really get audited. But with AI now, we have the potential of auditing every single interaction automatically and gleaning insights from those end customer interactions. So I think those are some of the bigger use cases that we are starting to see as well. Jumping track, Peter, we've talked about the potential. Obviously, there are significant challenges as well. And one of the big challenges to do any form of AI in an organization is really the quality of data, right? And we know that large organizations are extremely siloed, have a huge data quality challenge as well. So how do we work? How do large organizations work? Across this sort of challenge from a data quality point of view. What do you think is the success metric there?
There's a couple of things to consider. I mean, first of all, looking at what analytics tools an organization has in place in order to collect and analyze that data is number one. Sid, we do an annual buyers survey of about 700 enterprise CX decision makers. Now, one of the things that has become abundantly clear as we've tracked analytics and data collection is that nearly 100% of enterprises that we survey around the world in 10 different countries say that they have data collection as a tool. But when you start drilling down to the level of sophistication of the analytics, it gets more and more, in this case, less and less robust for every level of capability, down to personalization. Fewer and fewer organizations actually have these tools in place. Now, in my opinion, to answer your question, data collection, I don't think is an issue, but making sure that you're able to collect that data in a manner that the AI is going to be able to interpret it is going to be very important in terms of the interface. But equally, what's going to be important is providing the AI with those analytical tools that it can drill down and get to a point where it understands the consumer at that individual level. I think that everybody has gotten used to logging on to a particular e-commerce platform. I'm not going to name any names here, but being used to logging on and having recommendations put forward to you as something that you might want to buy, whether it's a book, whether it's a piece of music, whether it's a clothing article, because that level of analytics exists. And any AI tool that's going to be used by an enterprise is going to need to consider what data is being collected, how it's being collected, and the level of analysis that's being done on it as it's able to perhaps spit out recommendations to an agent or directly to a consumer.
Perfect. Thanks for your insights there, Peter. I think we have probably time for just one last perspective, and that the important perspective and probably the most relevant one as well is in terms of how humans interact with AI and about humanizing AI, right? So we can have the best technology solutions, the best form of data and insight, but at the end of the day, we still need to bridge the gap with humans, and humans need to be comfortable using those co-pilots that are going to be around us to make ourselves more efficient. How do we bridge that gap in an organizational context?
Boy, that is a $1 million question. And I think it goes back to that level of disruption we've seen the past 10, 12, 18 months around this AI discussion. There's a lot of uncharted territory. It makes me think of that movie Finding Nemo, where Nemo starts going out into the open water. Nobody really knows how this is going to be navigated. What I would say is this: there is a growing level of acceptance that the way you're going to need to navigate AI is going to need to be done in an ethical basis. You also can't get too far ahead of the technology. And this goes back to my days starting as an industry analyst, where we talked about practical technology versus cool technology. Don't start deploying AI-driven tools that are not necessarily going to be fully baked. That's going to be so important, because that'll just end up making agents upset. That'll end up making consumers upset. And I think also being able to pace the organization in terms of the level of adoption that it takes its AI deployments is going to be very important too. Don't try and build Rome in a day. Understand that this is going to be an evolution. Take a look at every successful technology that we've seen in the contact center space, Sid. I go back to what we were talking about around IVR. Well, IVR started out as DTMF, touch tone IVR. Then it morphed into what I would say were very good deployments of speech automated IVR. There were also very bad ones that were not fully baked. Those ones got thrown out. The ones that work were built upon. It's all about building blocks. It's all about looking to try and move the snowball a little bit further down the hill so it can amass more and more snow on it and get bigger. I think that we have to be conscious that this is going to be a long-term journey for so many different organizations, whether on the BPO side or the enterprise side when it comes to AI. And the recommendation I would make from a human standpoint is understand that this is a technology that can move very quickly, that will probably evolve very rapidly, but make sure every stakeholder at the human level is going to have a part in terms of understanding how it's going to impact their business and that end relationship with the consumer.
Absolutely right, Peter. It's going to be very important to put humans at the center of the design when we rethink our business processes, when we rethink our technology architecture. It's got to be with the end customer in mind. It's got to be with the employee in mind as well, because it's going to be important to balance the high technology options with the element of high touch and empathy. And I think that's where our focus at Teleperformance has been. How do we blend technology with AI, with empathy? So that we are able to really, build on the strengths of human beings and combine that with the strength of that AI has to offer.
If I can make a point on that, I mean, obviously my relationship with Teleperformance goes back quite some time. And I would say from a technology interface with humans, Teleperformance is one of the organizations that really gets this. It's probably, I'd say, on the cutting edge of these types of solutions and blending an AI interface or AI capabilities with what the end user or what the agent on the front lines absolutely requires. So my counsel would be keep up the good work, because I obviously follow what TP does very closely. I've had access to briefings around what TP solutions are. And in my opinion, from a BPO angle, Teleperformance is truly one of the leaders in the pack in this regard.
Thank you so much, Peter. And I think that's all that we have time for today. Once again, thanks so much for your insights, and I look forward to catching up with you again.